Alright, guys, today for you I have a little ghost story. It all starts back in the 1800s with an Englishman named Godfrey Barnsley who decided to move to the States and start his fortune and make a name for himself. And he did exactly that by shipping and trading cotton. He didn't necessarily grow it, but he made money by selling it. And so he quickly becomes one of the top wealthiest men in the state. And he meets a local girl named Julia Scoffenberg. I should probably double check that name, but we're going with that for now. And they fell madly in love and got married on Christmas Eve. And then they decide to run off to the mountains of northwest Georgia. This is right after the Trail of Tears, so all the Cherokee Indians were kicked off the land. But there was one that stayed behind, and he was befriended by Godfrey Barnsley. So the Native Americans stayed and worked with them and lived with them. All was going pretty well until Godfrey Barnsley was telling his befriended Native American about his plans to build this giant manor for his beloved wife. And the Native American was saying how his ancestors wouldn't agree with it, and he got upset and set a curse upon the land and left, never to be seen again. Godfrey Barnsley doesn't pay attention to the curse, he doesn't believe in it, and he decides to start building this anyways. So, shortly before the manor is completed, his wife Julia dies, giving birth to their youngest son, and unfortunately the son died along with Julia, and Godfrey Barnsley was devastated. He stopped the construction on the manor, he got really depressed. Well, that was until he saw Julia's ghost walking around the gardens here, and she was telling him to continue construction on the house and raise their family in it instead of just letting it fall to ruins. So a couple years after he sees her ghost, he finishes the construction and moves his family in, and everything is going pretty well. Well, let's keep in mind that this place is still cursed, and terrible things come in threes. So the next little series of unfortunate events all starts with a return voyage from collecting exotic plants for the estate, like the tree that you see here. This is actually 150 years old when Godfrey Barnsley planted it, the late 1840s. But they were coming back, collecting some exotic plants, and him and his son were actually attacked by pirates. Unfortunately, his son was killed in the attack, but Godfrey Barnsley was able to make it home safely. Unfortunately, instead of having a warm welcome, he found out that his daughter was also dying when he returned home, who is now a teenager. And to make things worse, the country starts going to war with itself, the business starts failing. One of Godfrey Barnsley's Confederate Army friends comes to warn of an attack approaching from the north and is shot and killed on the front doorsteps right before the attack. And this is just a year before the war is about to end. So the now almost penniless Godfrey Barnsley decides to leave the estate to his daughter and son-in-law, and he moves to New Orleans to try to rebuild his fame. Unfortunately, shortly after, he's joined by his daughter, not for a pleasant occasion, but because her husband is killed by a fallen tree. While Godfrey Barnsley and his daughter were reunited in New Orleans, she met a German man, and they fell in love. But shortly after, Godfrey Barnsley dies. So all three of them go back up to the estate, and that's where he's buried now today. So now back at the estate, his daughter and her husband start a family and grow old together, but unfortunately they both pass around the same time. At this point, their daughter, named Adelaide, met a chemist named A.A. Saylor, and they had their two kids, Preston and Henry. Unfortunately, in the early 1900s, the house gets struck by a tornado, and the roof is ripped off, and the family is forced to move into the kitchen. Preston was a champion heavyweight fighter, and he ruled the manor with an iron fist. And some were saying that he started to go crazy, and his brother Harry sent him off to a mental institute. After escaping the institute, Preston comes back to the manor and guns down his brother in cold blood. And for the very first time, the manor is sold to somebody who lives outside of the family. The land was used for farming, and the manor, without a roof, started to slowly fall to decay. Until one day, a prince of Germany, hears this story and the history of this land and is fascinated by it, and he decides to buy the property and salvage what he could. The prince invites two of the Cherokee Indian shamans to come check out the land, and they say that it definitely was cursed. And they also said when a person dies, their magic is no longer any good. The manor is now a museum, and you can go and check out all the little artifacts trying to preserve the history. There are plenty of reports of seeing Julia's ghost walking around the garden, or even Godfrey and Julia walking hand in hand around the property. Some say that you can see the Confederate Colonel Robert G. Earl drinking water in the mountain stream. Adelaide even said it herself that she saw the ghost of her son Henry, who was gunned down on the front porch. Whether you believe in ghost stories or not, it's still a really fascinating little piece of history that is preserved on this property. I would just recommend going and visiting for yourself, or you can read about the stories in some links that I'll provide in the description below. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this story. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for more. And until then, happy gardening. So if you guys stuck around this long, I got a nice little surprise for you here. Check out this bird's eye view of the property that the estate was built on, and the designs of the garden. It just adds to the mystery of the curse on the Barnsley garden.